Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our monthly meeting of the Cobb County Board of Zoning Appeals. As is our custom at this time, I'm going to ask a representative from Cobb County, Mr. Cornelius Pope, is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'd all please stand. Mr. Pope will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Cornelius. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are here for the first time, let me give you a little insight on how we're going to conduct the meeting today. The first thing that we're going to concern ourselves with is the consent agenda. These are applications that not only this board has reviewed, but our professional and engineering staff have reviewed. And to our knowledge, there's no known opposition to any of these cases. So as we go forward, Mr. John Peterson, our head zoning administrator, will read each case into the record. And as he does, the applicant, he or she, when it's time for them to identify themselves, as they would by raising their hand. As we go through this, if there's anybody here in opposition to any of these particular cases, likewise, they will identify themselves by raising their hand. If we have any opposition to any of these particular cases, we will pull the case and hear it in its regular numeric order as it comes up. And then we'll go into our other business today as our continued cases. And when we do have testimony to be given to this board, again, Mr. Peterson will read those into the record. Again, the applicant will identify themselves, and the opposition will also identify themselves. At that time, the applicant will have a 10-minute period to make the opposition or to make their application known to this board. And likewise, and collectively, those in opposition will have a 10-minute period to make their opposition known to this board. Our officer today is Margie, Miss Margie. When it's time for you to give us testimony, Margie will call you to the front. You'll be sworn in, and all testimony will be given to the podium to my right. With that said, Mr. Peterson, I'm going to turn it over to you for any special announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. I do have a few announcements to make before we begin the hearing. There is one case on today's printed agenda which has been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard. That's variance case V114, Robert Shea and Gina Ormsby. This case was withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard. That's V114. Additionally, there's two cases on today's printed agenda which have been continued by staff and will not be heard today. First case is variance case V150, Darren Long. This case was continued by the staff until the December 9th, 2020 Board of Zoning Appeals hearing. So V150 will not be heard today. Additionally, variance case V152, Solomon Rojas. This case was continued by the staff until the December 9th, 2020 Board of Zoning Appeals hearing. So variance case V152 will not be heard today. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to start the consent agenda.
John, I have been informed that we do have opposition to case V122, so we might want to put that on the regular. Let's start off with V131, if that's okay.
Okay, pull that one off consent agenda then. Cobb County Board of Zoning Appeals variance hearing consent agenda for November 12th, 2020. First case on the consent agenda is variance case V131. Larry Jameson requests a variance to number one, reduce the side setback for an accessory structure, an approximately 120 square foot shed from required 5 feet to 2 feet, which is existing. Number two, allow an accessory structure, which is a proposed approximately 529 square foot garage, to be to the side of the principal building. Number three, allow an accessory structure, which is the proposed approximately 529 square foot garage, to be located to the side street right-of-way line, to be located closer to the side street right-of-way line than the principal building. And number four, reduce the front setback for an accessory structure under 650 square feet for a proposed approximately 529 square foot garage from from required 35 feet to 14 feet in land lot 473 of the 19th District. The property is located on the northeast corner of Cane Ridge Drive and Cane Ridge Point. Staff recommends approval, subject to development inspections comments and stormwater management comments. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case of V131? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case of V151, Benjamin Aguilar requests a variance to 1, reduce the setbacks for an accessory structure over 650 square feet for a total 826 square foot existing wood frame building in addition for required 100 feet to 12 feet adjacent to the south property line and to 75 feet adjacent to the east property line. Number 2, reduce the major side setback from required 25 feet to 7 feet, which is existing. And number 3, reduce the front setback from required 35 feet to 28 feet, which is existing in land lot 350 of the 17th District. The property is located on the southeast corner of Old Concord Road and Mohan Circle, north of Pat Mill Road. Staff recommends approval. Subject to approval is only for the encroachment shown on the site plan received August 24, 2020. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case of V151? Nope. Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case of V153, Clifton S. Collins requests a variance to 1, allow a second electrical meter on a residential lot. Number 2, allow parking and/or maneuvering on a non-hardened and treated surface. Number 3, allow accessory structures, proposed approximately 1,800 square foot garage and existing approximately 400 square foot shed to be to the side and in front of the principal building. Number 4, reduce the side setback for an accessory structure under 650 square feet for an existing approximately 400 square foot shed from required 10 feet to 9.5 feet adjacent to the south property line. And number 5, reduce the side setback for an accessory structure over 650 square feet for a proposed 1,800 square foot garage from required 100 feet to 30 feet adjacent to the south property line in land lot 301 of the 20th District. The property is located on the east side of Mars Hill Road, north of Nichols Road. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, fire department comments. Number 2, no commercial or dwelling use of the accessory building. And number 3, maintain existing tree buffer so as to screen the new structure from view from Mars Hill Road. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V153? Nope. Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case V154, Michael Malone requests a variance to number 1, reduce the rear setback from required 30 feet to 28 feet, which is existing. Number 2, allow an accessory structure, a proposed pool, to be located to the side of the principal building. And number 3, increase the maximum allowable impervious surface from 35% to 36% in land lot 25 of the 1st District. The property is located at the southern terminus of Clary Lakes Drive, south of Clary Lakes Court. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, pool permit site plan to be approved and to be submitted and approved by Stormwater Management. The plan is to include existing and proposed impervious coverage calculations. Number 2, pool site plans shall also depict proposed grading and drainage patterns for stormwater runoff onto adjacent property. Number 3, if the variance is approved, Stormwater Management will require mitigation back to 35%. Final pool permit site plan is to be reviewed and approved by Stormwater Management. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant's here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case of V154? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case of V155, Ryan Applegate requests a variance to reduce the rear setback from required 30 feet to 24 feet. And number 2, increase the maximum allowable impervious surface from 40% to 44% in land lot 744 of the 17th District. The property is located on the north side of Lafayette Square, east of Wakefield Hall Square. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, variance request number 2 is revised to 47.4%. And number 2, stormwater management comments. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case of V155? Nope. Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case V156, Jeffrey Clement requests a variance to increase the maximum allowable impervious surface from 35% to 44% in land lot 253 of the 20th District. The property is located on the west side of Hazeltine Lane, south of Marietta Country Club Drive. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number one, variance request is revised to 47.2%. And number two, stormwater management comments with mitigation revised to 42%. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed? The variance case is V156.
No.
Let the record show there's no one opposed. Variance case V157, Elton Morgan, request a variance to number one, reduce the front setback from 50 feet to 23 feet, which is existing. Number two, reduce the major side setback from required 25 feet to 23 feet, which is existing. Number three, allow accessory structures, which are the existing sheds, to be located closer to the side street right-of-way line than the principal building. And number four, reduce the rear setback for an accessory structure under 650 square feet for an approximately 224 square foot shed number two from required 40 feet to 5 feet in land lot 1048 of the 19th District. The property is located on the southeast corner of Meadows Road and Oglesby Road, west of Caleb Crossing. Staff recommends approval, subject to traffic comments. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to the variance case V157? No? All right, let the record show there's no one opposed. And finally, variance case of V158, Honey Baked Ham Company requests a variance to increase the maximum allowable wall signage from 49 square feet to 75.42 square feet in land lots 903 and 904 of the 16th District. The property is located on the north side of Roswell Road, south of Providence Road. Staff recommends approval. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to the variance case of V158? Nope. Let the record show there's no one opposed. Okay, I'll go back to it. Mr. Chairman, please consent agenda. I need to read one comment over again for variance case of V153, Clifton S. Collins. For number three, it should read, maintain tree buffer so as to screen the new structure from view from Morris Hill Road. And that's it.
And that was case 153, John?
153, stipulation number three.
Okay. The applicant understand that? Okay, great. All right, it's back to this board for discussion, and I'll open it up. Any comments, questions? Go. Anybody have anything to say? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Got a motion, I've got a second with Brian. No other comments, call for the vote. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to approve the consent agenda with a 5-0 vote. Those of you that are here that were on the consent agenda, your business is complete with us for today. Now, you're welcome to stay, but if you leave, please leave now and please leave quietly. Have a great afternoon. So, John, as the folks are quietly leaving the room, I guess the next case, we'll go back to V122, I believe that's it.
Correct. Variance case V122, Jim Noble requests a variance to number one, reduce the required setback for a building used for animals, a proposed 2,500 square foot, 2,520 square foot barn from required 100 feet to 66 feet adjacent to the western property line, to 20 feet adjacent to the northern property line, and to 11 feet adjacent to the eastern property line. Number two, reduce the required distance to maintain animals from 10 feet from any residential property line to 0 feet. Number three, allow more than one animal per 5,000 square feet of lot area. And number four, allow an accessory structure, a proposed 2,520 square foot barn, to be on a lot without a principal building. The property is located in land lot 222 and 223 of the First District, located at the southeast intersection of Avon Road and Hyde Road, east of Beau Rev Park. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V122?
All right, those of you that are opposed, keep your hands raised till I can get a head count. Anybody opposed to this particular case? One person.
Let the record
We
show
have
there's one person
in
opposed.
opposition.
If you could do the same for support.
Can I get a number of people here who are in support of variance case V122? Please raise your hand.
Keep your hand up, how we can get a head count.
Let the
All right,
record show there's 8 people here in support. All those folks wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Anybody that's going to give testimony, come forward. We'll get you all sworn in. Anybody who wants to make a comment on this case, come forward. We'll get you sworn in. All right, folks, have a seat until we get started. All right, sir, for the purpose of the record, if you would, please give us your name.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Parks Huff for the law firm of Sams Lockton Huff, and I represent Mr. and Ms. Noble in relation to this variance request before you. What you have pulled up on the aerial is up on the overhead is showing the aerial of the property. This is the property that is on Hyde Road. As you look at this aerial, it's a long 3.2 acre tract with trees on the northern part of it, and the southern part is in a field with power lines going over it. That's the property we're talking about. Mr. and Ms. Noble purchased this property, and they actually live in the house that's just across Hyde Road from this on the upper left-hand corner, right at Bow, I'm going to mispronounce it, right at the corner of that property right there at the intersection with Hyde Road. So now you see the subject property, you understand how the property lays. And they currently have a couple of goats and donkeys on the property. This is basically the entrance to the Hyde Farm, so it's very appropriate to have farm animals around Hyde Farm. As some of you may remember the fabled story of Jack and Jill, and they were evicted from this area, so, they're trying to come back in. But Ms. Noble is also has some horses and would like to build a barn to properly house the animals that are there and to be able to have some horses on the property also. You can see the property just to the south. I'm going to orient you to the things that I think are relevant for your discussion. The property just to the south is actually owned by Georgia Power. My client leases. It's a large field. Part of the, obviously, requirement is that they maintain that as a field for Georgia Power and keep it cleared. And obviously, it's a great pasture. Property to the east is owned by the Sewells. And you can see also, if you're familiar with horse activity, that is used to having horse activity with a riding rink on there. And so this is kind of appropriate for the area. My clients, go on to the next slide. Oh, I've got the clicker, sorry. This is the site plan that shows the subject property. And you can see what they looked at was what is most relevant is the location of the barn. And you can see the barn is located in the southern part of the property, adjacent to the cleared pasture area where the power line easement is and where the Georgia Power property is. And I think everyone recognizes that this is the best location. It's where the animals are currently kept. It's the best location to build a barn, and makes a lot of sense in this location because it's adjacent to the pastures. And you can see the remaining property goes all the way up to Avon Road. And you can see basically where that property line takes a bend on that eastern line is where the barn is proposed. This is my client, and I handed each of you a copy of the, if I can hand that over to the clerk. My client has reached out to the neighbors and asked for their support in their request to build this barn in this location. And what you have is the owners that have in the area that have signed in support of this. Obviously, most relevant is the fact that every adjacent property owner that is contiguous to this is signed in support. Most importantly, of course, is the Sewells that live to the east and have a significant property line adjacent to us. So they have all signed in support of the request. I'd like to kind of go through the request. The first request, we initially had a request to subdivide the lot. You see the subdivision line that's shown there. We have withdrawn that request. So it's going to be one parcel. It's not going to be subdivided. We initially had a request, but we withdrew that request. And so we're talking about 3.2 acres of property with a barn on it. And the other request is to have the barn location, in this location, as I was telling you before, the location of the barn is intentionally set close to the fields, and I think everyone recognizes this is the appropriate location for the barn. We have withdrawn the request of a variance on the square footage per animal. We will comply with the county ordinances relating to that. And then the various setbacks, obviously, because of the properties is narrow in certain places. We have some setback variances, and then we have fencing up to the property line, which is what you typically see with this type of animals, and all the adjacent property owners affected by this agree with it, because that's how their properties are fenced too, up to the property line. So that's the variance related to that. This is a rendering of the barn. You can see it's attractive, it fits in with the area, and will be very much a nice entrance to the Hyde Farm area. We do have a lot of folks here in support. Obviously, that's important, but it's also important to recognize the fact that this is not anything flying under the radar, so to speak. This is very prominent entrance to the park area. Everybody's familiar with the animals, and the community embraces having those animals in that location. Also have to just comment, you know this area, you know the value of property in this area. My clients are, acquired it recently, and they certainly know the value of this property, and so they're not going to do anything that would devalue either this property or the surrounding properties, and all the neighbors recognize that. So we ask that, and there's a reason why this case was originally placed on your consent agenda, because it is a consent agenda type request. It's got support of the surrounding neighbors. It's a request that's in keeping with the area, and quite frankly, a nice nod to the history of this section of East Cobb that is going away rapidly. And so we look forward to your review of it. My client, Mr. and Ms. Noble, are here, can answer specific questions you have about it, but we ask that you follow what was recognized by your staff by putting on the consent agenda and approve the request. And I've got, yes.
You got 3 minutes.
Yeah, I've got
If you have other speakers, is why I'm trying to time.
I know that y'all don't normally ask for, allow me to reserve time, but I really think that in response, that
Do you have anybody in support that wants to speak? We're in a support situation now. Anybody wish to speak in support?
And now I can't find my pocket.
Okay, sir, come right up. Tell us your name, please, first.
My name is Aaron Lawson, and
Hey,
I'm
Aaron.
at 5408 Bora Park. I'm basically right across where the stables are going to be. So I'm one of the neighbors that it directly affects, and I'm 100% in for it. With Hyde Road being a dead end, and it's going right up to the park, for me, it's just a 100% layup going right up to the park. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, sir. Next speaker in support. Your name, please, first.
Good morning. My name's Stan Sewell. I represent the Sewell family, which is directly adjacent to this, where the barn will be built. In that pasture, for over probably close to 50 years, there's been a pasture there, and we built that pasture, and we'd had horses and ponies and stuff growing up all along through the years. So we don't think that's changing a whole lot out there at Hyde Farm. I believe that barn is actually going to give it a nicer appearance, and I really am in 100% approval for it.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, we have 55 seconds left. Anybody else wishing to speak in support of case V-122? Mr. Huff?
I think we're good, and again, we're all here. We can answer any questions that come up to respond to questions and concerns.
Thank you, sir. Okay, at this time, I will hear from the opposition. They please come forward. And again, ma'am, before you get started, give us your name, please.
Hi, my name is Diana Duane,
Dwayne?
Diana Duane, last name spelled D-U-A-N-E. Yeah, I married it. It's a hard one. So I am here, I guess, speaking in opposition to one particular part of this. The part that, the neighborhood that's located that you can see, I'm actually the next neighbor to the Sewell. So it goes the subject property, the Sewells, and then if you were able to go down below, I'm the property that would be right on the corner. Okay, do you see where the cul-de-sac is?
Yes.
That's part of my neighborhood. I'm actually one more house over. So anyway, that's where our property is
Is
located.
that your house, ma'am?
Yes, that is my house.
Okay, good.
That's the roof of my house.
Okay, there you go.
So I back up to the Sewell's property. I've lived there for 18 years, and I am considered one of the young people in our neighborhood. Our neighborhood continues south from down from that cul-de-sac, and we have 23 houses in our neighborhood. Since I am one of the youngest people in the neighborhood, I was elected to try to get an agreement with the Nobles, who I met through this process, who are very lovely people, and we're trying to come to an agreement on what they want, which is to have a lot dedicated to horses, and what we want as part of the neighborhood, which is to make sure we don't end up with a stable boarding riding place on that lot. Our big objection is that they're trying to do this without putting a residence on the property. Okay? Having a residence on that property gives us someone to go to. It gives us someone to interact with when the smell of the horses, the flies, the mice, that the manure's not being hauled off, all those things that might happen. Now, we're not saying at all that Chantel and Jim Noble will cause that problem, because they are wonderful people. Like I said, I've been talking with them. Chantel is a true horsewoman. But this property right now is owned by the Bradley Financial Group, correct? And it can be sold tomorrow to anybody. And once we give a variance that puts a barn on this property with no residence on this property, we're changing the complexion of that corner. This is a residential lot. It's R20. What we're asking for is that the Nobles put a residence on. Then if they want to come back and ask to have a barn or 3 structures less than 700 feet or whatever at the back of the property, then I think the neighborhood would say that's fine. Because as young Mr. Sewell
Ma'am,
said...
you have to address us, not the others.
Okay. As young Mr. Sewell said, there have in the past been horses and ponies and stuff on the Sewell's very large lot. It was allowed because they could put everything more than 100 feet from their property line, because Mr. Sewell, as you see, Charlie Sewell, he's an East Cobb treasurer, has nearly 13 acres. So this is a 3-acre sliver. Now, we are also, as the neighborhood, we are also quite aware that the Nobles could kind of put the barn they want near the top of the property. The way that shape of the property means, you know, a barn structure, stable structure has to be 100 feet. And so there's another graphic that shows a little dotted triangle in the middle. Could you go to that? Are you able to pull up that graphic? But anyway, they could put their barn almost directly across from their house, and then put a house down at the bottom, which would meet all the requirements of the existing variances. They don't need any variances if they put a house on, but us as neighbors agree that it makes sense to put the barn down near the property that they're leasing to do for grazing. So there's a lot of agreement in here, and we're trying our best as good neighbors to work with the Nobles. But allowing a barn only in a residential neighborhood is something that we can't get behind, because it could be sold tomorrow and it could become East Cobb riding stables, as happened already along Johnson Ferry Road. And that's what we really can't allow to happen. I'd like to tell you that although I am here as myself, our neighborhood association of 23 neighborhoods. I'm also, I have emails in support from 10 other people. What we're also, the reason we don't want a barn only is because, one, we don't then have access to an owner who lives there, who will then also be worried about the noise and the smell and the lighting and the bugs and everything that comes along with horses. The other thing is, this is a 3-acre property. Based on the current rules, if we allow this huge barn, which is, the size of the barn is 2,520 feet, okay? That's enormous. One story, 2,520 feet. We had a meeting with the Nobles where they were very forthcoming to tell us what was going to be in this barn. 6 stalls, an air-conditioned tack room, a she shed for Chantal, a bathroom. This is a huge structure on here. The 3-acre lot, at the current rules of 1 animal per 5,000 square feet, a 3-acre lot could house 20 horses. We don't want a stable operation with 24 horses there. What they have now is they started out with 2 goats to eat, they'll eat to keep it clean. We're within 2,000 feet of the river, so then they added 2 donkeys to protect the goats from the coyotes that run the river, and now they want to add at least 3 horses. Chantal's going to rotate her horses through here. So we see this as a rather large operation. This isn't, the family dog in a doghouse. And so without the primary residence, we don't think that we're keeping the R20 nature of this neighborhood. Are there any questions I'm not a professional speaker, and this is my first variance meeting.
You're doing a very good job. You've got 2 minutes left, ma'am.
I've got 2 minutes left. Okay. Let me use that 2 minutes to tell you, read from comments from Sandy and Sandra Abrams, who are both seniors who can't get out because of COVID. The proposed barn looks like a boarding stable. The smell and possible diseases are enough to persuade this from not happening. As you've said, once the property is rezoned, then the next purchaser can exploit the zoning. We don't want an attraction that brings any more traffic in the area. Hyde Farm already draws too much. By the way, this property is in the ARC, in case you were wondering. Whole set of other things. You guys are all familiar with the ARC, right? It's 2,000 feet within the river, can't cut down trees kind of thing. This is Kathy Williams. When the Nobles first bought the lot, Mr. Sewell told me that it was bought so their children would have a place to ride their motorbikes. So for those of you who walk frequently, the area already smells like a barnyard, and the donkey can be heard all over the neighborhood. Can you imagine the smell if this is not defeated? The Nobles can afford to house their animals elsewhere. So I have many of these about the ARC and the MRPA. Great work. Another issue is the environmental effect of having the dung from all the animals that will inhabit a 2,500 square feet huge barn. Storm runoff for that property, and the power easement dumps into the ditch that goes into the ponds on Hyde Farm that feeds the hooch. So it's just not, right now, we're not ready to approve this variance. I think the neighbors need to talk more with the Nobles, and we need to come to some agreement where they put a house on the property and then apply for their accessory structure. What they're asking for here is an accessory structure with no primary residence, and we can't get behind that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, I declare the public session complete. It's back to this board for discussion. You can have a seat, ma'am.
Thank you.
And Mr. Bryant McDaniel represents that district. So, Brian, if you would, please lead us to discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I ask Parks and maybe the Nobles or one of the Nobles to come up and join you just for a minute? Just a few questions, and I'll open it up to my fellow board members. But based on some of the comments that we were hearing from Ms. Dwayne, I just wanted to ask, is there any intent to run a business on this property?
No, there's no intent to run a business on the property.
So if we have a stipulation to that effect,
Yeah,
that shouldn't be any...
no business license or no business that would, yeah.
Got it. How many animals do you plan to keep on the property?
Probably a maximum of 6, because there's 6 stalls in the barn. Now, there could be 6 horses at some time, and then a few goats running free, but not anywhere near the 24 that we would be allowed. We would maintain compliance with the existing zoning of any other piece of property in Cobb County that would have any animals on it.
Yeah.
So we're not asking for anything there at all.
So if we were to put a stipulation on some limit of 10 or something even?
I think 10 would be completely acceptable.
Okay.
And I would think it would be less than that at all times.
Yeah, one of the things that I got from Mr. Wayne was just concern about, there not being any accountability for what is happening on the property. Can you show us on that map where you live?
Go to the left.
Yeah. That's my house right there.
So you're basically across the street?
I am probably the closest one to it other than the Sewells, yes.
Yeah.
And there's a little walking bridge from the side of my house that goes to Hyde Road. So I actually go out the side door of my house, so across a little walking bridge, and then walk across Hyde Road to this property. And my wife is back and forth, 10 times a day.
Got it. Last question from me. How often will you be checking on the property and the animals?
Oh, multiple times a day. In fact, we have people that, even if we're out of town, that stay at our house to take care of our dogs, but also know how to take care of the animals across the street.
Okay.
My wife's horses, when we keep a few of her horses there, they're not inexpensive animals. They will have somebody, they'll get better care than you and I. So.
All right, thank you. That's it from me. I'll open it up.
All right, while Mr. Knoll is here, any questions from any of our members? Fred, do you have a comment?
I'll wait if anybody else does.
Fred, we're waiting on you.
Just out of curiosity, what is Bradley Financial Corporation?
Bradley Financial Corporation was simply an investment company that I formed many years ago, mostly to hold real estate that I would buy and keep, and it was mainly formed for liability purposes so that I wouldn't get personally sued if somebody fell in a manhole or something.
Okay. This is not in any way some sort of for-profit enterprise that...
I wish. No, it's not for profit.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had for you. Thank you.
I guess I do have one other quick question, and I know there was some communication with Mr. Dwayne earlier in the process about this primary building on the property, and you also changed from wanting to subdivide. Can you explain the rationale for both pulling back on the plan to subdivide and not to put a primary structure on?
The original plan to subdivide was just trying to think years ahead, right? And the years ahead was, maybe someday I would want to develop something else on this other piece of the property that's further north that has a lot more potential. Because it was a large investment. It was almost $1 million investment in this piece of property. So I was just trying to keep future 10, 20 years from now options open. But when I thought about it and I looked at what we were really doing, it's like, subdividing the property really isn't important. That's one of those maybe someday in the future things. It doesn't matter today, so why cause a commotion about it? If we wanted to do that in the future, we'll apply for that variance in the future. But the primary residence issue, and listen, I understand Diana and the few other neighbors that have their concerns, and again, they're good people. They don't have ill intentions at all.
Sure.
It just doesn't make sense for me living across the street to build another primary structure over there on that piece of property. You're tearing down more trees, you're creating more concrete, and I think it would actually have the opposite effect of what they were concerned about. because I have a very large, nice primary structure already across the street, I'm not going to build $1 million primary structure on this piece of property.
Right.
I would build a small, minimum-sized piece of structure that would probably be used by people that were there taking care of the horses. This would be where, you know, your farmhands would live. And that wouldn't add to the neighborhood or the value to have this tiny little structure there, just big enough to be a primary structure. And it would actually cause the opposite. It would encourage more commercial type use of the property because, hey, we've got a couple of farmhands that live here that can take care of all the horses and what have you. So we just disagree on how useful that primary structure
Okay.
would be is all.
All right, you've answered my question. Again,
John, on the flip side, Mr. Peterson, if we've got a 3.2 acre and it's zoned R20, approximately how many houses could we put on that property? Probably close to 15, 20.
5 or 6.
5 or 6.
Depending on how
5 or
it's laid
6.
out.
Yeah. 5 or
So
6.
the flip side is if you did want to pursue it on a commercial basis, a build, we'd have 5 or 6 houses there. So it seems to me that the neighborhood is getting the benefit of some open space land without the infrastructure being there. Do I have any other comments from any of our fellow members? Fred?
I just saw, it may just be clever, but it said woodland creature home on the proposed barn. I've been called that on the golf course before. I'm curious what the,
I have to credit that completely to my wife. My wife thought it was cute and that it would be appealing for the future home of the woodland creatures. And I heard later that caused a lot of consternation with some neighbors. It was like, wow, what are woodland creatures? Are these going to be like, foxes?
And your wife is always right. Just stop right there. We know where that goes. Do I have any other comments, questions?
Yeah.
Galt, do you have something over here? I'm sorry, Freddie.
no, go ahead. I was just going to ask, did Dick, you made a reference to, does Dick Yarborough have an opinion on this somehow?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, I mean, he's concerned about Jack and Jill, and as we all are.
Mr. Galt Porter.
Okay. I would say, I do understand the barn could probably be put up closer to the road rather than back near the power easement, and it would seem like granting the variances for where you put the barn, it would affect the Sewells the most, and they're in full support, so I don't really see a problem with those variances. So it gets down to the question of a primary structure or not. And it seems, in this case, if we can couch it such that the property can't be split and leave this barn as an only structure on its own lot, if we can somehow put that into the variance, then I think we're gaining some green space for people, and we aren't setting up that future problem that could occur if you put houses on the top part and just leave this barn sitting on the bottom part with neighbors a lot closer.
Galt, if he wanted to do that, he'd have to come back before a board, either the zoning board or this Board of Appeals to do that. So I don't know if we can, I'm not sure I follow how to do that. I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
Brian, we're going to throw, or Judy, Ms. Williams?
Thank you. I think that variance, one of the things that I did notice in Parks, if you could, how far away is the opposition subdivision? Do you offhand know?
Yeah, I mean, it's so,
Is it over here, way over here where the cul-de-sac? So they're not going to be backing up to the animals, the barn, or anything, right?
Yes, we will.
Ma'am,
no.
I'm talking to them, okay, thank you. 400 something feet away.
Judy, I think he's going to try to,
About 440, 450 feet.
About 400, 450 feet,
May I
okay.
address this
Corner of the
gentleman?
subdivision.
Ma-
May I address him?
No.
no, ma'am, we can't, unless somebody wants to, the process is this. You've had your turn, now it's their turn, and we have the process to ask the question. So unless a board member wants to bring you back up, your process is ended. Now, where are we, Judy?
Oh, okay, so I was getting the answer of approximately how far away the nearest property owner that was in opposition would be. So we know that it's not 100 feet, we know it's probably more, exceeds 300
Tim,
feet.
can you get-
You said, ma'am,
Tim, can you give us some kind of answer?
Well, I measured from the closest parcel in this cul-de-sac, from that corner to there, it's about 450 feet.
And that's just to the closest part to her neighbor's house.
Can you correct it, please?
Okay. All right,
Can you correct it, please?
I don't know the answer.
I think,
this is my question.
I thought it was.
yeah.
I thought he was right.
All right, listen,
Ma'am,
whoa,
Yeah,
folks, we're
let's
getting
go.
out of line now here.
Sorry.
Miss Williams
Sorry.
still has the floor, and I've got to let her finish her
Sorry.
question.
Hi, I'm Judy Williams.
Hi,
and-
Judy. I'm Jim.
Hey, how are you? And I'm asking the question as a
Yep.
member of the board. The closest neighbor then would be, we're assuming, is not adjacent. Let's phrase it that way.
That's
They are
correct.
not adjacent to this barn.
Correct.
Okay. So the barn is being proposed down close to where the power line
Yeah,
easements are,
basically,
correct?
right where he's showing right there is where the barn would be.
And the property owners that are adjacent where the barn is going have no problem with it?
100% of the property owners who border it
Have no
signed
problem.
support.
Support.
And I actually like the concept of, in this particular area, it is in the ARC, and I'm going to ask Carl to come up in just a moment. But I think we all know when you're in the river corridor that the more structures you try to put on, the less ARC likes it. So I think the barn being in there is more advantageous than putting a house to go with it. I like the idea of it being a rural-looking kind of thing. So if I could, Mr. Chairman, I would like to get Carl up here
Yes.
to ask him about the
Absolutely.
river corridor, since this is in the ARC.
Come forward, sir.
They're going to have grazing in that.
Ma'am, you are out of order. Please, you have to let us proceed with our process. If a board member wants to ask you a question, then you can answer. Until this
Oh, okay,
point,
I'm
you
sorry.
cannot say anything.
I'm sorry.
Sir, would you identify yourself and tell us what you do?
I'm Carl Carver with the Cobb County Stormwater Management.
Okay, Ms. Williams has a question for you.
Carl, we realize this is in the ARC. At this point, do they need to go through your office? Of course, they have to go through your office, but do they have to do anything in addition to going through your office for approval from the ARC?
Yes, they would have to come through our office for permitting when they submit for their building permit. And we will review what's on file, what we have on file for this piece of property. The amount of impervious is based on the soil type classification in the ARC.
Right.
So we'll have to compare that to what they're proposing as impervious surface, because in the ARC, there's limitations on the amount of impervious. Other than that, that's about the only restriction we would
And
have.
would you say it's a fair statement, having dealt with ARC, and I've dealt with ARC over the years, that the less impervious is better?
That's correct. And we may determine at that time that they have to get a permit from ARC.
Okay, fine. So there's other points that they know about that they have to go through, other, besides just the building permitting section?
Correct. When they submit to Cobb County for their building permit, it'd come to our office. We would compare that to what we have on file, and if we see it needs to be updated or because a piece of property can have different type soils within it, and so there can be some swapping and still meet the criteria of ARC, and then they don't have to go to ARC. But if there's an amendment to it, then we may have to send it to the ARC.
Thank you, Carl. I think the point I was trying to prove that one structure is much better, given this
Right.
location, than two structures.
And what Carl is saying is a normal review that they have to go through, which is standard. Okay, Brian, it's back to you. Wait a minute, Fred, do you have a question?
Ms. Duane, can you come back up, Mrs. Duane? Can you just explain to us, it appears to us here that it's several hundred feet from the closest point in this subject property to the nearest house in your neighborhood. Do you have some explanation as to why that's not a correct analysis?
Yes, and I thank you and apologize for not understanding the logistics. Exactly where the man has his little hand right now in the middle That lot that's labeled R20 is an integral part of the Noble's plan. R20 is an easement owned by Georgia Power that goes under the property line, and that is where they're going to keep the horses. That is where the horses are going to graze, is right there. So if you highlight the R20 lot like you just did in that pretty purple color, that right there is, our neighborhood is right there on the corner. When I stand in my backyard, there's an elevation. I oversee a lot of the Sewells and a lot of this land.
Okay.
So it is very
Fred,
connected.
does that answer your question?
Mostly, I see where it says R20 in that block right there, and just beneath it, it looks like there are either cars or tennis courts. What's that right there?
That's the neighborhood garden at Hyde Farm.
Okay, so that's a neighborhood garden for your subdivision or everybody's use?
For Hyde Farm, everybody uses that.
Everybody's use. Okay, so there's that whole lot in between you and
No, that big R20 lot where the trees are shown right now, can you highlight the trees?
There you go.
That right there, that is the corner where our neighborhood actually touches the property where the horses are.
And your house is two houses over?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
two to the right. The Yocums and the Bridges live there, and they're both seniors who unfortunately can't
Yeah,
make
but
these
you're
meetings.
two houses over. That's
Yes,
just-
I am in
Just yes or no?
Yes,
that's all.
yes, I am, sir.
And then
Fred, keep going.
Finally, it appears that the nearest house at the end of North River Forest Court has a healthy tree buffer behind it. Is that a fair statement or not?
No,
Those aren't trees there?
it's a single row of trees. It's just taken from an angle. It's a single row of trees.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have, thank you.
All right,
Thank
any
you.
other questions while we have, Galt, do you have something for this young
I'll
lady?
just comment, I think the Sewells own the property directly adjacent to the subdivision, so if the horses were going to be directly up against the subdivision, other than that one little point, it's, going to be with the Sewells' permission.
Yes.
And they can have horses there already if they want to,
Yes.
so it's not, and then the next parcel over is owned by Georgia Power, and below that's the county park. So,
That's
it's
a Cobb
long-
County Park, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so just want to get that all
All
clarified.
right. Thank you, Fred. Galt, sorry. I think, Brian, we're ready for you.
All right.
If I'm not mistaken? Okay. Ma'am, you can have a seat now.
Oh, thank you.
Unless anybody wants to ask you a question, I don't foresee that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ms. Duane and Parks and Mr. Noble. And Ms. Duane, I'd just say thanks for your interest in the case. Before hearing it, I could understand some reasons for concerns on the part of neighbors, but after having heard all the testimony and really kind of studying the case, and knowing that the Nobles and Mr. Huff looked at other options, all the ones that you had proposed, they're no longer going to subdivide. They did consider the primary structure, but it sounds like that could potentially create more issues than it would solve. Knowing that the Nobles live right across the street, and that they will be checking on the animals in the property frequently, and that they're not going to be able to avoid neighbors if there are any issues here, and knowing that so many of the adjacent neighbors are supportive, I am going to make a motion to approve of case V-122 with the staff comments, and as we are noted in here, pulling the subdivision from the variance will, I guess, obviate the need for the part of the first request for 20 feet reduction to the, adjacent to the northern property line, and won't need the variance number 3 at all anymore. And then I would also like to add 2 other stipulations, one being that no business will be run on this property, and secondly, that no more than 10 animals will be kept on the property at any one time.
Got a motion, do I have a second? Fred has a second. Any other comments? Not hearing any, a call for the vote. All in favor signify by raising your hands. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to approve that with a 5-0 vote as it was presented. John, where am I? What else do I have with you?
You're done.
I'm done. Judy Williams, we've got some minutes to take care of. Can
Okay,
you
and
do
I
that
have one
for us?
more thing, Murray, if we can do it
Oh,
before
I'm
the minutes.
sorry, that's correct, yes. Mr. Goldporter has on last month's case, I believe it is.
Yes, yes. During case 136 last month, in part of my motion, I made a motion that the renderings would come back to the district representative for approval as part of that. And then in a subsequent case, V145 in District 1, Fred had made a similar kind of motion, and there was a lot of debate about that, and we came back that it would come back to the entire board for any approval of the elevation. So what I want to do on this one is go back and amend the V136 from last month to make it consistent with what we did later in the same hearing on V145. So I move to amend the previous motion of V136 considered by this board at our public hearing on October 14th, 2020. The previous motion and board action approved the variance request with the elevation subject to the approval of the district representative. I move we strike district representative approving the elevations and replace it with staff to bring the elevations to the board as other business for approval. Furthermore, I move that we waive all fees, mailings, and posting requirements for the other business item. And that's the
On that
motion.
case? Yes.
Right.
All right, it's a motion. Do I have a second? Ms. Williams, a second. Let's call for the vote on that. All in favor signify by raising your hands. Okay, Madam Secretary, that's a vote from 136 for last month, and you've got that. It's a 5-0 vote. Thank you, Mr. Porter. Judy, let's do the minutes.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes for October the 14th and for November the 9th as presented.
And I'll second. Holman seconds. All those in favor signify by raising your hands. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to approve that 5-0. For those of you that are home and on here still, I just want to remind you we're in a perilous time with COVID, so please wear your mask and be careful. Take care of yourself and take care of your neighbor. Thank you very much. That's it for this month.